Unit 8. Now, in Unit 8, we're dealing with installing an operating system, managing an operating system, or upgrading an operating system. Now, the trick here is to know the capacity or capability, functionalities in many cases, if you will, of a specific interface within an operating system. What can an operating system do for you, and how easy is it to use? Now, not all operating systems are made the same. Sometimes certain operating systems require specific hardware requirements that are uncommon. Over time, the hardware requirements have increased higher and higher because the operating systems have been asked to do so much more with each new version. And we've got a number of different operating systems. We can use a Mac operating system, OS X. We can use a Windows operating system. An example would be WinXP, Win 10. We can use a Linux-based operating system, Unix, Linux, Ubuntu. And with each one of these, it's not just one type or one version of that operating system. So for Windows, for example, we've had well over a dozen different versions of Windows. And sometimes, like with Win 8, we didn't have just one version of Win 8. We had different flavors of Win 8. And then even within, and when I say that, I mean Win 8, 8.1, 8.2. And within, say for instance, our Win 10, we have different types of versions of Win 10. And it depends on how that system is intended to be used. Is it for educational use? Is it for home use? Is it going to be used in an enterprise in some way? And with each one of those lends itself to different functionality requirements. They're not all the same when it comes to their hardware requirements. So we need to be aware of the hardware requirements of the operating system and the hardware configuration of the system that we're wanting to install it on. The RAM, the size of the hard disk, they are critical to being able to install an operating system onto a hard disk. We've got a number of different ways that we can do the install. We can do an attended install where we are there making sure every question on the install gets responded to by us, or we can run an unattended install where we've created a script or an answer file for each one of those questions that we would be prompted to respond to. We can do an install remotely and push the image out to a system if needed. And we would do that usually across a network as a network administrator. For what we're dealing with now, we're traditionally having to repair, in many cases, the operating system. For some reason, some file's been corrupted or somebody wants to upgrade their software. There are many things that come into play when we're talking about upgrading software. Not all software is upgradable. Not all software can be upgraded from specific versions. So, for example, if I wanted to upgrade to Windows 10, there are only a few versions of Windows that can be upgraded to Windows 10. The rest would require a clean installation. And in those cases, you would have to save all your data to an external drive, do a clean install of Windows 10, and then bring that data back in and store it on the new system. This new operating system that you've installed would then have to be configured with any user accounts, permissions, etc. So it can be quite cumbersome if you're doing a clean install and having to reset everything. but sometimes a fresh start's better than dealing with problems from the past. We can, in some cases, and we don't see it so much anymore, we can have what we call a dual boot system, where we can partition our hard drive and have two operating systems on the hard drive. And when the time comes to start this computer, we point to the appropriate partition, and that partition would start up, and we would utilize that specific operating system to manage our computer for us. And that's all that an operating system is a way to manage our system. We don't speak binary, but the operating system does, and the operating system can talk to all of our devices that are integrated into the system by using the drivers, or I like to call them interpreters, so they can then be controlled or used. So we'll see you in the next chapter, Chapter 9.